Championship stadiums ranked from worst to best. This one's going to get tasty. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Always enjoy doing this one every season, but today we are going to be ranking championship stadiums from worst to best for this upcoming season. Now, in today's video, we are going to be ranking these championship stadiums by the following 5 criteria with a score out of 5. We're going to be ranking them on design, character, atmosphere, the away end, and the surrounding area. So how much is there to do around the ground? Overall, we're going to be giving them all a score out of 25, and from that, I formulated my list. Don't take this one all too seriously, it's only for a little bit of fun, but do let me know in the comments down below what for you is the best and worst stadium in the championship. Without any further ado, let's jump into it. In at the bottom of the list, we do have the Car Leasing Stadium, which, let's be honest, is an awful name for a football stadium. Coming in at the bottom of the list, home of Reading, coming in with a measly 11 points in total. The biggest areas where this one was marked down was the character and atmosphere, as a result of being one of the newer grounds built in the championship, I believe built in around about 1998. The atmosphere suffers as a result of this one being quite a big and open ground in that typical sort of bowl shape. As a result of that, a lot of the atmosphere does escape out of it, and the surrounding area around the ground as well, there's just not a whole lot to go ahead and do as an away fan, apart from parking. I must admit there is plenty of space to go ahead and park in Reading, but in terms of away pubs, things to get up to before the game, it is quite a trek you need to do away from the stadium to get to any of that. In 23rd, we have the New York Stadium, home of Rotherham United. This one only actually opened in 2012. It is the second smallest stadium in the Championship with a capacity of just over 12,000 fans. Overall scored 13. The biggest area where it was marked down was design. It is one of the smaller grounds in the Championship, and that character because it is one of the newer grounds as well. As a result of being one of the smaller grounds though, it does do a better job of trapping in that atmosphere, and because there aren't all too many empty seats as a result of that as well, it does build the atmosphere that little bit more. 22nd place, we have another modern stadium. It's the MKM Stadium, home of Hull City. Now, I do think this will be a ground which potentially gets better with time as more money goes into the infrastructure of the ground, the surrounding area, and things like that, because the actual design for it, for modern stadiums and how they go, I actually don't mind this one all too much. The atmosphere when I went to Hull last season was actually probably the best I've ever seen it, to be fair. Since the new takeover's gone through, I'm sure there'll be plenty more season tickets pouring into the ground next season as well, and as a result of that, the atmosphere will continue to get better, which will only make it a better experience as an away fan and a stadium in general. 21st place, we have Kenilworth Road, home of Luton Town. Now, this one is a Marmite ground. You're either going to love it or hate it. I've given it a little bit of a mixed score across all the boards, really, ultimately coming out with a score of 13 out of 25. The biggest redeeming factors for this one is character. It's got so much charm about this one because of how unique it actually is for a championship ground, and the atmosphere in there as well, which I do have to say looks very good as well. Where it does fall down a little bit, design in terms of how you're quite limited with some restricted views around the stadium. It does look a little bit misshapen really with how this ground has been put together. The away end as well, facilities and things like that aren't quite up to scratch with some of the other grounds that we're going to talk about, but it will be a ground which will be missed, I'm sure, when Luton do eventually move out of it. In at 20th place, we have the DW, home of Wigan Athletic, coming in with a score of 14 out of 25 overall. I'd say the biggest redeeming factor about Wigan's ground is probably the away end. You know, you get given that massive end behind the goal, so if you want to go ahead and do so, you can absolutely pack it out with away fans, and I have to admit I am quite looking forward to Wigan away as a Preston fan as the first game of this upcoming season. Atmosphere does suffer a little bit as a result of it being, you know, a big crowd and the empty seats and things like that, but 14 out of 25 overall for me. Bloomfield Road is just a massively mixed bag in terms of a championship stadium. I've scored it 14 out of 25 overall. The biggest redeeming factor of Bloomfield Road does have to be the atmosphere, in fairness. I think they do quite well actually to trap all that into the stadium. I think with home fans behind each end of the goals, the way that this stadium is built is quite good at enclosing all of that and making a good atmosphere with the home fans. Biggest area where I've scored it down has to be the away end though. It's just not a good away fan experience. experience really. You know, you're funneled in through one or two turnstiles. It's a temporary stand which isn't up to scratch with some of the other away stands we're going to talk about. Not a great concourse or anything like that as a result of it being a temporary stand, which I know Blackpool are working on in terms of that infrastructure. And another real gripe of mine that we'll get to later on in the video is when you as an away fan aren't behind the goal. It just doesn't quite sit right with me when you're an away fan at the side of the pitch. But character and area, I've given it a 3. I think there are some decent places in terms of an away fan, you know, to drink and stuff like that before the game, but it's a little bit all over the place. The Swansea.com Stadium almost scoring 3 across the board. Only area where I've marked it down slightly is on that character. It is one of those more newish grounds in the Championship which just start to sort of blend into that boring sort of bowl shape which we all don't like. But the design of this one is actually quite fresh really. They do edge away from that by making it all sort of a 2-tiered stadium with the black and white seats and stuff like that as well, which work quite well. Once again, the Bet365 almost scoring 3s across the board. The only area where I've marked this one down is the actual location of the stadium. It doesn't feel like, as an away fan, or maybe even as a home fan, that there's all too much going on immediately in and around the football ground. You know, you're quite limited really with what you can do pre-match at Stoke. In terms of the stadium itself, I don't really have all too many issues with it. I think it's a decent away end there, and you know, you're right next to the home fans, which I like. Behind the goal, atmosphere is decent, and the design of the ground, don't have any complaints about that either. The Cardiff City Stadium opened in 2009 and is the 3rd biggest stadium in the Championship, holding around about 33,000 fans. As a result of it being so big though, I think the atmosphere does probably lack a little bit because of that. I think on average last season Cardiff had around about 18,000 home fans, which does leave the empty seats, and obviously because it is quite an open and expansive stadium, at times the atmosphere can get a little bit drowned out as a result of that. But area, I've given it a 4 out of 5. While there may not be that much immediately around the stadium, you're only a stone's throw away from Cardiff City and Cardiff City Centre as a whole, where there's a bunch going on. So 14 out of 25 overall for me. Another fairly modern stadium is Coventry's CBS Arena. This one marked down because of the character. Coventry haven't quite had that opportunity to go ahead and build up that rapport properly with the stadium because of ownership issues in the past and things like that. But something I thought Coventry got spot on last season was the home atmosphere. I thought they did quite well actually to place the away fans right next to the sort of hardcore home fans. As a result of that, even with it being quite an open and expansive stadium, it does trap the atmosphere in a little bit better when you've got those two sections of fans sat right next to each other. So 4 out of 5 in that aspect. It is marked down a little bit on the area. It's next to a retail park, but for away fans in terms of pubs and things like that, you do have to do a little bit of a trek as a result of that. And I feel like because in the past it's not been Coventry's permanent home, those local businesses and pubs haven't quite had the opportunity maybe to go ahead and grow along with the fan base throughout the years, but I'm sure that will come in years to come. Next then to Blackburn Rovers Ewood Park, which is coming in 14th place on today's video. This one dates back to 1882 but was obviously renovated during the 90s. Does have that history about it, which is why I've given it a 4 out of 5 for the character. Falls down a little bit on area and probably especially atmosphere as well, with it being such a big stadium. It does lose that little bit of noise, and with the empty pockets of seats as well. So 14 out of 25 for me for Ewood. In the 13th, we then have the Riverside, home of Middlesbrough. This one scoring quite well for atmosphere. I've always found the atmosphere to be decent at the Riverside. I think as home fans go, Middlesbrough probably up there with some of the best in the Championship. Falls down a little bit on character. It is one of those newer grounds which does start to blend into that classic bowl shape, which we don't like. And away end as well, it is just a personal gripe of mine when away fans aren't situated behind the goal. You're sort of on that second tier up and to the side of the pitch and sort of forgotten about in the corner a little bit at Middlesbrough. In at the halfway mark, in at 12th place, we then have Turf Moor, home of Burnley. Now, I'm sure that Turf Moor isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it is just that gritty, traditional, old-school football ground, which I think does have quite a bit of charm about it, to be honest. I've given it a 4 out of 5 for character. Atmosphere, away end, I've given 3s, as well as design as well. It's been far too long since Preston last played Burnley in the Championship, so I am very much looking forward to that away day this season. I've given it a 15 out of 25 overall. The John Smith Stadium is also another one which I fairly like, home of Huddersfield Town. This one does quite well for design and atmosphere especially. It is quite quirky really, with those curved roofs, which is quite unique for a football ground. I've bumped it up a little bit for that. And the atmosphere from Huddersfield home fans has always been really quite decent whenever I've gone as well. It is marked down a little bit, particularly on away end. You don't really get a concourse while you're there. You're sort of outside in that bit before you go into the stand. It's a little bit weird with how it's made up. And whenever I've been, there's not been that much immediately around the ground either, but maybe that's just been my personal experience. But 15 out of 25 overall, it does get into the top half for me. I quite like this one. Into the top 10 we go. Coming in 10th place, we then have the Den, home of Millwall. This one coming in with 16 points overall. The Den does have a certain amount of uniqueness to it in the Championship, which I do quite like. Another one similar to Burnley, which is a little bit of a throwback in terms of that gritty style of Millwall, really. Area, I wasn't quite sure what to rank this one because there's not that much going on around the ground, but you've got such easy access to the rest of London that I've sort of gone in the middle with 3 for that one. In at 9th place, we then have Loftus Road, home of QPR. There is a certain charm about this one and how sort of tightly packed in you are and how on top of the pitch you actually feel in this ground. 16 out of 25 overall for Loftus Road. I think in terms of design, character, its uniqueness, it's been bumped up in that regard. Away end, I've only given it a 2. It is a little bit cramped as a result of it all being quite tightly packed and things like that, and you do have those areas of the stadium where you do get a restricted view and you've not got a great view of the footy which is going on. Coming in 8th place, we then have St Andrews, home of Birmingham. This one coming in with a score of 16 out of 25 overall. I've given it a 4 out of 5 in terms of the area. You're in the midst of Birmingham. There's loads to do in and around the city. And as for the rest of the ground as well, I actually quite enjoy this one, even though it was only operating at like half capacity last season due to the maintenance work going on at the ground. Can't really pick out all too many flaws with this one. It does have the one stand to the side of the ground, which probably does need that refurbishment, but St Andrews does have a certain charm to it. In at 7th place, we then have Deepdale, home of Preston North End. I'm sure I'll get a few pelters for putting Deepdale up this high, but I absolutely love this one. I'm sure it does have something to do with me being a Preston fan, but I think it's one of the best design stadiums in the whole of the Championship. I love the uniqueness to this one, the brilliant floodlights, to the artwork on each of the stands with, you know, a legend's face being on there. It's just got a sense of uniqueness and charm which I don't think is always present at every other stadium in the Championship. As well as that, it's also the oldest continuously used stadium throughout the whole of the EFL and arguably throughout world football as well, though that one is contested. Deepdale is a stadium which is steeped in history. As an away fan coming to Preston, you get that whole away end behind the goal, so you can go ahead and pack that out and have a great away day at Deepdale. The only thing that lets it down for me personally is probably the home atmosphere, which has really been lacking in recent years. I'm hopeful that because we've sold more season tickets this time around, we've started to open up the Kop as well to build that atmosphere a little bit more, that in years to come that will start to build, but right now that's probably the biggest area where Deepdale is lacking. Into the top 6 we go. Coming in 6th place, we then have Vicarage Road, home of Watford. One ground which I am still yet to visit, so I had to be a little bit in the middle with some of my rankings here, but in terms of the design and character, I actually quite like Vicarage Road. I like the uniqueness to it and the uniqueness of each stand in there. It also has that Premier League shine to it as well, with some of the infrastructure and building that's gone on around the stadium in more recent years. And overall, 17 out of 25 makes it into my top 6. In 5th place, we have the Stadium of Light, home of Sunderland. By far and away the biggest ground in the Championship, holding just shy of 50,000 fans. It is, in terms of scale, by far and away the best in the Championship, although it does just get marked down on a few categories, most notably the away end, where, let's face it, you're watching Subbuteo at this point. You're right up there in the gods. You can't really have that rapport and back and forth and bit of banter with the home fans because you are so high up in the ground. I've given it a 4 out of 5 in terms of atmosphere as well, because of videos that I've watched of, you know, Sunderland's promotion season and in their peak in the Premier League as well. It does look like it can get rocking, albeit when I went with Preston during their relegation season from the Championship, it wasn't the best, although I am expecting that to be a hell of a lot better this time around. But yeah, 17 out of 25 overall. It is good, but not my personal favourite. Next up then, in 4th place, we have the Hawthorns, home of West Brom. This one getting a score of 18 out of 25 in total. Giving it a 5 in terms of character, the Hawthorns really is a stadium which is steeped in a bunch of history. From this one dating back to over 100 years ago, to the legends that have played in the ground and things like that. And actually the design of this one I quite like as well, if I'm being honest. The only area where this one falls down ever so slightly is the away end, ever so slightly, only because you are somewhat limited on capacity and how many fans you can actually bring to this ground, as they do tend to split that stand behind the goal, so you're sort of capped out at around about sort of 2,500-ish. Attendances always seem to be really quite consistent there though at West Brom, and a score of 18 out of 25 is certainly nothing to be sniffed at. I'll go as far to say that West Brom away last season was probably one of my favourite away days of the whole year, and as a stadium I do quite like the Hawthorns. We're getting close towards the top now, but coming in 3rd place we then have Norwich City, also coming in with a score of 18 out of 25. Norwich do a really good job of season upon season packing this ground out. That of course adds to the atmosphere, character and charm to this ground as well, and I do like the uniqueness and design to Carrow Road, it has to be said, in a really nice area on top of that as well. The only place where this ground is sort of knocked down in my estimations is the away end, and we're going to go back to that gripe. It's because the away fans aren't situated behind the goal. Just a bugbear of mine. It doesn't feel natural to me when you're an away fan and you side onto the pitch. It's just weird. Coming in 2nd place and just missing out on that top spot, we then have Ashton Gate, home of Bristol City. I am a massive fan of this ground. I think there's been some tremendous work done it to sort of redevelop this ground over the years, and more recently as well, all the work that's gone into the surrounding area, adding everything on top of this one, and even with it having that modern shine to it, it's still not lost that little bit of uniqueness and charm that it once had back in the day as well. In terms of the area, I absolutely love it. I think Bristol's great in terms of the facilities there, walking into it as an away fan, what you can do in and around the ground, and Bristol as a city as a whole. Slightly marked down on the away end because it's not quite as modern and up to date with what the rest of the stadium looks like, but Ashton Gate I think is an absolute cracker of a ground. I think the atmosphere when I went was really quite top notch considering it was a 0-0 draw. So yeah, this one scores quite well across the board for me, 20 out of 25. But coming in 1st place and stealing the show as the best stadium in the Championship, it was always going to be Bramall Lane, wasn't it? One of the personal favourites of mine, coming in with a score of 22 out of 25. This one has a little bit of everything for me. In terms of scale, it's one of the biggest in the Championship, holding over 30,000. In terms of history, it's a ground which dates back to the 1850s. The area, there's an abundance of stuff you can do up and about Sheffield before and after the match as well. The atmosphere gets building before a match, from the greasy chip butty to the banter you can have between the home and away end, and the away end really being the only sort of mini gripe that I might have with Bramall Lane, because you're sort of spread thin throughout that bottom tier. You're not quite all bunched up like you might be in the ideal away end, but overall I don't really have anything bad to say about Bramall Lane. I think it's a cracking away day, a brilliant stadium in terms of that classic design to it, the character and history that comes along with this one as well. By far and away for me, I think this one's the best ground in the Championship, all things considered. There we have it though guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and do get your thoughts in the comments down below. Was I too harsh on any stadiums, or was I too kind for any? Let me know down below what for you is your personal best and worst stadium in the Championship. Do leave a like if you want to enjoy, and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Thanks for watching though guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.